guys, what's up? It's Marissa and I'm back for another booktube video, and today I'm going to do another top 10 video. I know, I just felt like it. So today what I'm going to be doing, or what I'm going to be talking about, is my top 10 favorite historical fiction books. Some of these you guys have heard me talk about before, some of them you probably haven't. So let's get into it. These, just a disclaimer, these are in no particular order. I just wrote these down as I thought about them. So the first one I want to talk about is The Other Boleyn Girl. I've already talked about this in a few videos, I think. It has to be one of my top favorite. I mean, if I was going to pick a favorite, this would probably be it. You're following Mary Boleyn, which is Queen Anne Boleyn's sister, and you're following her from the time right before she becomes the mistress of King Henry VIII up until after her sister is executed for treason by King Henry VIII. So basically you're following the other Boleyn girl, which is the whole reason for the title of the book. And this book really portrays Anne in a very, very bad light. Like, she's this like uber bitch, and she's just out to sabotage her sister because she's more ambitious, because she's been heartbroken, and yada yada yada. So I really enjoyed the perspective of this book because Mary Boleyn is still an interesting character, and it's still interesting to watch her follow everything that's going on in the court and follow her sister and see like Anne's inner workings, basically. So definitely pick that one up if you're interested at all in Henry VIII and his 6 wives. The next one I want to talk about is Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. I just reread this last month. I have actually seen the book, and this one is following a girl, this one is following a girl from the time that she was really little, growing up in this fishing village, and then her father basically sells her to this man who ends up taking her to a town and selling her to this geisha house. And she, you know, goes through a lot of stuff and eventually becomes a geisha, and it's basically all the drama surrounding that. I love this book. I love how rich in history it is. Unfortunately, while I was reading this book last month, I did happen to watch another video by Murphy Napier, who is another booktuber, and she was talking about how Arthur Golden essentially made up some stuff for this book, and how the former geisha that he talked to and he got all this information from wrote her own book because she was so disappointed that he basically twisted her words and her story in this book. So it kind of colored my experience to it a little bit. I still think it's a good book, but I think I need to go read more of the own voices perspective of the geisha that this was actually based on also. So that is something that I am putting on my TBR list. So just go into that knowing that part of this, the sexualized part of this book, was taken from another perspective, and it absolutely has nothing to do with geisha. So just kind of take the book with a little bit of a grain of salt. You know, you can admire it for its rich history and admire it for its rich characters and rich storyline, but don't read too much into it and think that you now understand. You know, I had to go do my own research, and I definitely suggest anybody else who wants to read this book do the same. So that's that. The next one is For the King's Favor by Elizabeth Chadwick, and that one is about the court of Henry II, which of course is a precursor to Henry VIII. And it's about a gentleman named Roger Bigod, and he comes to court and he basically falls in love with the king's mistress, Ida. And she cares about the king, but she knows she's just a mistress and that she's never going to be the queen, yada yada yada. So he falls for, Roger falls for the king's mistress, and of course the king doesn't want to let his favorite mistress go. So it's a whole bunch of drama, it's a whole bunch of historical fiction. It's really, really good. Really, really good. And it's not necessarily set with political machinations. It's more like the storyline of Roger and Ida and falling in love and their kids, and you know, the crap they have to deal with trying to get out of the palace. And I ended up really enjoying this book, even though, you know, it doesn't center around Henry VIII and his wives. The next one is Those Who Save Us by Jenna Bloom, and this one was a World War II historical fiction. It's set in the modern day, but it's about a mother and her daughter. Yeah, a mother and her daughter. And the daughter has been begging all of her life for her mother to tell her the story of where she came from and what happened to her during World War II. And the mother never wanted to talk about it. So now you're getting this story in the modern day that's weaving in this World War II story. And the whole premise of this is that the mother was basically a mistress of an SS officer, and that's how she survived World War II. And she felt really great shame over this, because she did not want to be his mistress, but what choice did she have? If she wanted to survive in Nazi Germany, that's what she had to do. And you go through it just feeling, at the beginning, you watch everything slowly start to crumble in Germany, and her life and the lives of other people around her are just deteriorating. So you really get this sense that you're in the story. It is so well done. It is so well told. It is a tearjerker, let me tell you. So if you're interested in World War II historical fiction, definitely pick that one up, because that is really good and really heartbreaking, honestly. So the next one is The King's Fool by Margaret Campbell Barnes. And that one follows Will Sommers, who is King Henry VIII's fool, essentially. And so you're seeing things from the fool's perspective. And if you know anything about medieval history, the fools are the only ones in the entire kingdom that can tell the king like it is. If anybody else mouths off to the king, makes fun of the king, you know, he can exact revenge on him, but the fool is the only one who can tell you, hey Henry, you're being a dick, and Henry has to go, okay, you know what I mean? So it's really interesting, because Will Sommers is crossing that line with King Henry VIII, and you're watching all the wives that Henry has, and Will just kind of sitting back and seeing all this unfold. So it's a really interesting perspective. I never really would have thought to read it from that perspective until I picked this book up, but it lends an outsider's air to it while still getting an insider view, if that makes any sense. So the next one is Secrets of the Tudor Court by D.L. Bogdan. And this one follows Mary Howard, and as you know, the Howard family are cousins to the Boleyns, which is obviously Henry's second wife and his sixth wife. Yeah, sixth wife. Man, I had to think about that. That's sad. No. His fifth wife, yes. His second wife and his fifth wife. His second wife was Boleyn, his fifth wife was Howard. So basically you're following Mary Howard and dealing with her political family, dealing with Anne Boleyn and her political family, and here you have sweet little Mary Howard kind of stuck between the two of them. So it's definitely a weird perspective. I will tell you that there are a lot of trigger warnings in this book. There is some incest, there is some rape in here. So if you're sensitive to those things, probably don't pick this book up. It's definitely really messed up, I will tell you that. So yeah. So the next one is the Six Queens series by Alison Weir, and that one eventually there is going to be, of course, 6 books for the 6 wives out. Right now there's only 4, but these books are so good, so good. Let me just tell you, when you're reading the first one, Catherine of Aragon, you are really getting this desperation and desolation and all the drama and crap that she went through from the time that she came to England until the time that she died. So you're really like getting in her head and feeling for her story and like understanding her internal motivations. And then when you go into the second book, you're like, ooh, I hate Anne Boleyn because she just took the place of this queen. But then Alison Weir does such a good job of flipping that script on its head and going, okay, here's what you saw from the outside in this last book, but here's what was really going on. And it's like, you know, you're hating this character, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I didn't look at it that way, and now I feel sorry for her. So Alison Weir does a really good job of just mingling this stuff in there and just making you feel things for these people who have been dead for a long time. So these books are really good. I couldn't even pick just one. You gotta read them all because they're amazing. So the next one is The White Princess by Philippa Gregory. This was turned into a TV show. I read the books long before they did this. So this one follows Elizabeth of York, and she goes from being an exile and basically a political prisoner to being the Queen of England. And her brothers were supposedly killed, but she knows that one of her brothers actually escaped. And so the king ends up finding out that one of her brothers escaped, and of course he's like paranoid and freaking out and like, oh, this guy's gonna come back and take my throne from me, because Elizabeth and her family were the rightful heirs to the throne before Henry came over and took the throne back from him. So basically he goes through this whole book being paranoid and like rooting out all these pretenders and basically killing them all. So it's a really interesting book, but a lot of it is like I said, paranoia about, you know, oh, this kid's gonna come back and take my throne from me, yada yada yada. So it does get a little bit repetitive in that, but it really portrays Henry as a kind of a monster, because he's super nice at some points, but then he can be a super dick at other points. So yeah, I mean, that's with any book, of course. Characters are not just black and white. So the next one is the Berlin Trilogy by Laura Anderson, and this one I still classify as historical fiction, even though it's very much like alternate. It's an alternate reality. It's an alternate ending. This is what would have happened if Anne Boleyn had given Henry VIII a son and he had actually survived, and so she had Elizabeth and a son, and she was still alive when Henry VIII died. So basically you're following her son and you're following Elizabeth, and just kind of seeing what really happens, or what really happens. I don't know why I just said that. Seeing what would have happened, or what might have happened had Anne Boleyn actually had a son. And it's very interesting, and it goes from this, you know, you're following this group of friends to, at the end, it's like shattered. I mean, everything's just shattered. And I will tell you, this is not a spoiler, they tell you this right on the back, but it does end with Elizabeth I being queen, just because I think the author wanted to really stick true to actual historical events, and the fact that Elizabeth I does become the Queen of England. So, you know, you still get that, but then you get this amazing story to begin with. So it's good. It's really good. There's 3 books in that series. The next one, and the last one, finally, because my mouth is getting tired from talking, is Murder Most Royal by Jean Plaidy. And this one, it follows Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard. And it weaves their stories together because, of course, they were queens at different times, obviously. And so it weaves their stories together and shows a lot of their similarities and their differences with being married to King Henry VIII. And then the fact that Henry kills both of them in the end. Those were the only 2 of his queens that he actually executed, were Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard. So that's why the book is, of course, called Murder Most Royal. So yeah, those were my top 10 historical fiction books. If you guys are interested in any of them, if you have any questions or comments or anything about them, just let me know down in the comments and I will be happy to answer them. And as always, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.